So Jordan Peterson has decided to go to a traditional Latin Mass, which I found very interesting. Of all of the different rites in the churches, of all of the different experiences of the liturgy, that he decided to go to the traditional Latin Mass. As many people know, I love the traditional Latin Mass. I love to experience the Mass as saints experienced for centuries and centuries and centuries. The Mass that Maximilian Kolbe would have celebrated, the Mass of St. Francis de Sales, the Mass of St. Ignatius, the Mass of St. Robert Bellarmine, the Mass that St. Francis would have helped at during his time 800 years ago, the Mass of St. Dominic. You know, of course, there has been changes to the liturgy, modifications, but the Mass was always God-centered, centered on God. The priest offering the sacrifice of the Mass, echoing what happened in the temple in Jerusalem when priests would have gone up to the altar to offer a sacrifice. This unbloodied sacrifice that the priest offers, the Son being offered to the Father, it's profoundly mystical, it's profoundly beautiful in the traditional Latin rite, the Vetus order, the old order of the Mass. And it's interesting to see Peter Jordanson wanting to experience that. I think without dividing the church, we should have a debate about allowing this amazing experience into the church. And I think anybody that goes to a traditional Latin Mass, you can't help but being drawn into this amazing encounter with Christ, the silence, the prayer, the reverence, the beauty, if it's done well, if it's prepared well. So it's an interesting time in the church to see Peter Jordanson joining Sheila Buff, who, if people will remember, Sheila Buff had that interview with Bishop Barron, and he really defended the traditional Latin Mass. He defended his experience as a young man going to traditional Latin Mass, and it's amazing now to see Jordan Peterson also stepping into that arena. I mean, the debate on the liturgy will go on. The debate on this liturgy, on one side we have Cardinal Roche, who said, no, we have a new theology of the Mass. The Mass has changed. It's groovy time, guys, now. We have to get the young people back into the church. And but all of the new generation of Catholics seem to be interested in reverence and, something serious, because if you experience traditional Latin Mass, and if you've ever served at traditional Latin Mass, it's a whole effort. It's like army precision type work that you need to do to serve at a Mass. It's not, I'll stand beside the altar and I'll give the wine to the priest when no, there's a lot more to traditional Latin Mass. And I think it's a great preparation for men in their faith to actually serve at the traditional Latin Mass, to know the responses, to kneel beside the priest, and to enter into that mystery of the Mass. So, this is something that the church has lost, because, most boys today don't want to get involved in the Mass because it seems like something girlish, and I've seen that many times, if in the Novus Order, because it's seen as girlish. That, let's face it, no real man a real boy wants to get involved in the liturgy anymore, because that's what we've feminized it so much over the last 50 years. That's simply a fact, guys. There's no other way to say it. Whereas in the traditional Latin Mass, it's profoundly masculine. It's the priest who, as a man, is offering the sacrifice on the altar, united in the church. And there's a whole theology behind this that sadly has been lost in the church. And in the old Mass, you would have to be trained. My grandfather used to train altar boys how to serve the Mass, to say the responses in Latin. My father knew those. And, it was a whole process. It was a whole education. It was something beautiful to watch, and it was something beautiful to know, and many people knew and experienced the Mass in that way. So let's see where this goes, how this works out. Will Jordan Peterson become the latest advocate to push traditional Latin Mass? It will be interesting to see where this goes, and by any means, the traditional Latin Mass isn't dead yet and won't be dead. It will survive this crisis in the church. You can't kill the faith that so many saints experienced for so many centuries. You know, Saint Francis experienced the Mass with the priest offering the Mass ad orientem towards God, towards the Orient, towards the East. And that nurtured Saint Francis, and he went out and he served the poor. At one side he was contemplative, at the other side, he was active. And so many saints experienced this. And it can't be wrong for us in 2023 to have that same faith experience, to nurture ourselves in the liturgy the way so many saints did during so many centuries. This crisis in the church at this moment, this new theology of the Mass that Cardinal Roche seems to be pushing, let's see where it goes. I would I don't know where it'll end up, but my bet is the old Mass won't be long before we see a resurgence in it, because so many young people, especially young men, are attracted to reverence, are attracted to a Mass where we give due reverence to our Lord. The liturgy isn't some Sunday happy day on pop concert celebration, or every week, what's the priest going to do this week to make the liturgy more interesting. The Mass should be about God. It should be about ourselves giving praise and worship to our Lord Jesus Christ in the Mass. Anyway, interesting times. Pray for the church, and pray for Peter Jordanson. God bless you. Take care. Bye bye.